I was born to a young, happily married couple in Cleveland, Ohio, at the end of 1944. My father was a mechanical engineer, and my mother was a secretary with artistic talent. I was followed in 18 months by my brother, John III. Our family was typical for the times: stay-at-home mom, hard-working dad, living in apartments, which changed every time my father was transferred for business. When I was 8, I experienced my first and perhaps most tragic life-changing event, the sudden death of my father when he was 39 years old. My mother, in shock, took my brother and me back to Cleveland to live with her parents for a while. Due to her determination and resilience, she was able to save enough money from secretarial jobs to buy our first home in a Cleveland suburb just 1 year later. That was 2 more moves, but this time it felt permanent. Mom got a job in the same school system where my brother and I were enrolled, so that our hours and vacations would be similar while we were young. Fortunately, I had a happy teenage life, feeling comfortable and included with both boys and girls. In 7th grade, I began chumming around with 8 girls just right for me, not too cool and not too nerdy. We dated a similar group of boys throughout high school, and 5 of us, including me, married our high school sweethearts. Those women are still among my best friends today, and we vacation every year together at Put-in-Bay, an island in western Lake Erie. We call ourselves the Yayas. I received the hoped-for scholarship from St. Luke's Hospital School of Nursing, a diploma school in Cleveland. I felt very much at home there. Each student had an individual room, which also felt very secure. Because of the pressure of having to keep my scholarship with good grades, I studied hard and did well academically and clinically, and in my senior year became student council president. After graduation, I got married at the age of 20 and worked in the operating room full-time to pay off my co-op agreement with St. Luke's. We had our first daughter 18 months later. I loved being a mom and cut my nursing hours to part-time, nights and evenings, to take care of my baby. One morning I arrived home from work and found my husband feeding our daughter a bottle, but she was blue and not breathing. I quickly pulled her upside down by her feet so she could get rid of the milk that was choking her, while my husband looked on, startled that anything was wrong. No more night shifts for me after that. Our family increased by 2 more daughters, and I continued to work part-time for about 20 more years. My favorite settings were with elderly patients. As my children got older, I sought more responsibility at work, but knew I needed more credentials. That meant more school, and I found out that a new RN to MSN program was beginning at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. I obtained a few prerequisites and the necessary financial aid because I was recently divorced. But things worked out, and I began the program with 5 other eager and ambitious women who were my lifeline during this stressful time. This also was my first introduction to nursing theory, but comfort had always been an important part of our clinical duties at St. Luke's. In grad school, I met dynamic and accomplished faculty who began shaping me in ways that I could not have anticipated. It was in this environment, over the next 15 years in graduate school, that I evolved into a theorist and a teacher of gerontological nursing. I met my present husband while in school, and we married in 1986 as I was completing my MSN. He is a philosopher, and he inherited 3 teenage daughters who came to love him very much. He encouraged and helped me enormously throughout the rest of my career. Friends, faculty, fellow students, and family also contributed greatly to my confidence and ideas about comfort. A second life-altering event occurred as I was deciding about my dissertation, the tragic death of my brother from cancer at the age of 43. He was hospitalized while receiving debilitating chemotherapy, and I learned to be acutely aware of all of his comfort needs and the way nurses tried to help him, or the way in which different hospital protocols made him anxious and agitated. While in graduate school, I also taught full-time at the University of Akron, and I was blessed to have a faculty partner, Therese Dowd, who wanted to do comfort research with me after I completed my PhD. We became productive in publishing, receiving grants, and moving comfort theory forward. My son-in-law helped me develop my website, one of the earliest in nursing, which was very student-friendly. After all, students were the future leaders and possible advocates for comfort theory. My teaching always included comfort theory, and students did comfort care plans for each of their assigned patients. Their feedback and thoughtful questions in turn influenced the theory. My life as a nurse theorist has been rich with purpose, meaning, writing, and pondering the comfort of myself and my family, my students, my patients, and their families. It was a path I could not have predicted, but I had many cheerleaders along the way who knowingly or unknowingly inspired and supported me. My main job now is to recruit comfort warriors for the future who will carry on my hopes for nursing practice, which always values and attends to the holistic comfort for those in need of health care.
Well, Kathy, I'm so glad you've agreed to do this interview, and I'm looking forward to hearing you and talking with you today. But I know our viewers are going to be so pleased to hear you talk about the theory of comfort in your own words.
Oh.
And so I usually begin by having you talk a little bit about how this all got started.
Well, it just kind of had a life of its own.
Oh, yeah.
When I went to graduate school, our first assignment by Rosemary Ellis, who was teaching science of nursing, asked us to diagram our practice. And at the time, I was working on a dementia unit. So I looked in the literature for the concepts that had already been developed for dementia work, and realized that there was a certain state of being that we wanted our residents to be in or to experience so that they could then do tasks of what was called optimum function at the time, which would be like helping us make lunch or engaging in their bed bath or their shower. They would help with the task, but if they were agitated, it didn't work. And if they were agitated, they could get the rest of the residents on the floor agitated too. So we were always trying to keep them calm and in a state where they were just wandering around and talking to each other pleasantly. And for my diagram, I wanted to name that state of contentment. And after thinking about it for quite a while, I mean, a couple of weeks really, I came up with the concept of comfort, just that word. And it fit really well in the diagram. It just described how we wanted the patients to be most of the time. And Case Western Reserve, where I was going to graduate school, always encouraged us to present our ideas. So I began presenting my diagram, and one day a person in the audience asked if I had done a concept analysis of comfort. How do you define comfort? And I hadn't really thought about that. I thought everybody knows what comfort is. But I thought I'd better get a little bit more precise. So I began searching the meaning of comfort in the literature. And after a couple of years of examining all of the literature from different disciplines and nursing, I came up with three different kinds of comfort, three types of comfort. I called the first one relief, which was largely what the nursing textbooks were talking about. Mm-hmm. A patient needs relief from a certain discomfort. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes it was pain, of course, sometimes anxiety, sometimes loneliness, but they needed relief from that. So if the nurse was successful in relieving that need, they were in a state of comfort. Mm-hmm. The second type that we discovered in the literature, and my husband helped me with this because he was a philosopher, was the sense of ease, the contentment that I was trying to describe with my dementia patients. And the third type was what Patterson and Zetterad described in their book for psychiatric nursing, and they called it transcendence, where the relief couldn't be total from these extreme discomforts, but the nurse tried to help the patient overcome that or get over that barrier by motivation or inspiration or support, coaching. And if they were successful, we'd call that state of transcendence. So they could still have some kind of pain or some kind of anxiety that wasn't totally relieved, but the transcendence helped them work with that. Again, I presented the three types of comfort to a few conferences, and in the middle of the night it occurred to me that these three types could occur physically and mentally. So I drew that on a grid, and three types across the top in the physical and mental. Took that back to my classmates who were always critiquing each other's work. And one classmate said, well, that's not very holistic. Just physical and mental. That's not how nurses talk about holism. So you better go back and look at the literature again. So it took another year, but I found 4 contexts of experience, which I called physical, and that would be related to the diagnosis and the physical sensations. Psycho-spiritual, socio-cultural, and environmental. And those were the 4 contexts. Putting those together gave me a definition of comfort, which I said was a technical definition that would embrace all of these different contexts and types of comfort. So on this origami, the 3 green squares are the types of comfort: ease, relief, and transcendence. And the rest of the squares are the contexts. And the beauty of looking at this as a total comfort state is that the nurse can intervene, say, with pain over here, and also with anxiety over here, and that intervention can cause effects in the whole state of comfort. So the holistic comfort increases, even though not all of the different parts of comfort have been addressed with one interaction.
Maybe you can say what those are, the different
the 3 green ones are relief, ease, and transcendence. And the 4 kind of orangey ones are physical, psycho-spiritual, socio-cultural, and environmental. So the nurse can go into the room and offer companionship that would address social comfort, and clean up the room a little bit, get rid of the clutter, that would address the environmental, maybe adjust the shades for more light or dark depending on what the patient wanted, and find that the whole patient's demeanor just kind of relaxes because so many of these needs are addressed at one time. And it's very efficient. The nurse can do this as he or she is giving a medication, for example.
Sure. And we do, don't we?
We do. I think the expert nurses intuitively do this because they know that nursing is more than just tasks.
That's right.
It's the interpersonal sense of connection that the nurse tries to bring to the situation. Well, so I had finally defined the concept of comfort, and my advisor, Beverly Roberts, said, looking at the grid, which now had 3 types across the top, 4 contexts down the side, can you make a questionnaire out of that grid? And I hadn't thought of that at all, but of course it was a brilliant idea. This is why we are in graduate school, because our professors pull us in a direction that we could not have anticipated. So I said, well, I think that would be the easy part, because I've already got these cells intersecting for each aspect of comfort, and I can design an item for each. And I went home, and I really literally did that overnight. But I'd been thinking about this for a long time. Anyway, there's a lot of background there. And I came up with a questionnaire that had 4 questions per cell. So 4 times 12 is 48. 48 questions. And then she said, well, you should do a pilot study with that. And I did. At first, she said I would need 10 participants per item. I went to the hospital and out to the community and got people to answer this questionnaire. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed talking about their own comfort. And but it was becoming very time consuming because I was in school full time, I was teaching full time. So I looked in the literature and found a statistician who said 5 subjects per item would be good enough. So I did end up with about 250 participants. And the questionnaire was subjected to statistical analysis, and it was a very strong questionnaire. So that was delightful and surprising. So as I was progressing through school, she said, well, now you're going to have to do an experimental study for your dissertation. I thought it was a bit early to do that, but, you know, she's the boss. So I designed an experimental study using my definition of comfort and a modified questionnaire for my population. And that's what I used for my dissertation study. So I had to write a theory to underpin the study. There wasn't a theory of comfort. So I just put together some logical, almost like a nursing process, linear string of 6 concepts. And the first was the nurse assesses the healthcare needs of the patient. The nurse designs interventions to meet those needs. The nurse takes into account the intervening variables of the patient, like the diagnosis and their physical strength, their social support, their financial abilities, and then the outcome of those interventions, the desired outcome would be comfort, an increase in comfort over time. And that underpinned my dissertation study. So the theory came out of necessity to do a comfort study, which my advisor thought was the thing to do for where I was. So.
And now, were you in school when you were on the faculty at Akron, or was
Yes.
it? Oh, okay.
Yes, I got the job at Akron after I got my MSN.
Okay.
And they needed a specialist in gerontology, which was what I had majored in for my master's degree.
Oh,
so I was teaching full-time and going to school part-time.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so it's interesting, yours was very much in the context of really an advisor that kind of prompted you and helped you move through the process of developing an instrument. Now, I've had a student that I chaired that developed an instrument. It usually took about another year.
Oh, it did.
It took longer
Yes.
for the ones that developed an instrument. But if they were wanting to do something like you were, where there wasn't, it's interesting, probably that word was in the fundamentals textbooks, or
Comfort was talked about a lot, but it was mostly in the context of relieving pain.
Okay.
And at the beginning of my research, Nanda defined altered comfort as nausea, vomiting, and itching. Period. That was it. Nothing about mental comfort. And going back to the early literature from our earliest nurses, they talked about how important it was to comfort our patients.
Oh, yeah.
And not just pain.
I think Nightingale talks about comfort.
Nightingale, absolutely. She said that's what our observations are for, to increase health and comfort.
Yeah.
But we lost our way when technology kind of blossomed in nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that with current baccalaureate teaching, very little attention is given to actually comforting a patient. It's more the skills.
I know. The art kind of gets left behind, doesn't it?
The art gets left behind.
And the reason for nursing, I mean, some of that beginning, and I think that's the heart of it all for me. You know,
that's where our roots are.
Yes.
I mean, we came about to comfort our patients. And as you know, in the Crimean War, there was very little medication or anything we could do except offer our therapeutic self to help the soldiers.
That's amazing to me what they did at the Crimea.
Yes,
you know,
right.
And I didn't know for a long time that the war was really across the sea, and they brought those people over. Then they had to load them onto carts, big carts that I suppose were horse-drawn carts, and took them up the hill to the hospital. When I saw that, and when I was in London at St. Thomas's Hospital, they have one of those carts.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the, I think, in the lobby. They have a cart.
And then Nightingale also attended a lot to the environment.
Oh, yeah.
She cleaned it up. And she opened the windows so that there would be fresh air. A lot of environmental strategies were developed by her.
That's right.
Yeah.
And comfort's a part of all that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's related to all that. So that's why I thought your illustration was good, that it talks about the different characteristics that lead into comfort or come together to create comfort or affect it. Maybe I should say.
And for nurses to envision how important these comforting interventions are on the whole of comfort. And we don't need to necessarily achieve total comfort for our patients. Most of them we can't in a hospital setting. They're too stressed and away from their homes, etc. But we can increase their comfort. So any comfort studies that we do have done subsequently to my dissertation study has been looking at an increase in comfort over time.
Oh, okay.
Given an effective intervention. So the intervention can just be your approach to the patient, or guided imagery, or music. Those kinds of holistic interventions can target more than one cell.
Oh, yeah. That's what becomes very clear, that those all. They're all related in a general system kind of way, and that's interesting. I like that. Now, when you were doing your work, did you ever find another instrument for comfort, even in another discipline or anything?
No.
So it's very unique what you did.
It was the first time comfort had been measured.
Yeah.
And even my husband said, "You can't measure comfort; it's too complex." But I said, well, I have to because my advisor wants me to. So I have to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
And he kind of lost his sense of what I could accomplish because he thought that was asking too much. But the way she had me divide the task into parts that were logical.
And look at it incrementally.
Yes.
It developed.
And of course, case is very quantitative and was even more so at that time.
Oh, yeah. I remember when they used to insist that everything be quantitative.
Everything. And I was more of a qualitative researcher, I felt. But I had to be quantitative there.
Yeah.
And So you do what you have to do.
Well, that's right. I said until I really, it was way after my doctorate, I think, that I said, I've been trying to measure the soft things in nursing,
Right.
like respect and responsibility
Right.
and empathy. And I was doing all of those with quantitative research,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And unless you have an instrument or two that will capture the essence of that,
Right.
you really, and then the setting may not be the right setting for
Right.
it to
Well,
be happening.
Once you define a concept, especially like on a grid, you can adapt it. So my general comfort questionnaire has been adapted for the setting or for the research question. And I think that's very helpful. Case's approach was absolutely right. In order to participate in the science of nursing, we had to be able to measure these important concepts.
That's right. Yeah. Do you have an idea of how many people, have you kept track of people using your instrument for other studies?
Well, when I just revised the chapter for your book, I did an extensive search of the new literature, and I was surprised at how many are using it.
Okay.
There was a big increase.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about practice and where comfort is in practice and how much that means to the patient. But I am interested in other aspects of nursing, like in education and or administration, other places that it's being used.
Well, when I had my clinical courses and they were in gerontology, my students had to do comfort care plans.
Okay.
And that was on they would list every comfort need that their patient had that day that they recognized, what the intervening variables were, and then everything they did for the patient.
Oh,
and
okay.
because it was a holistic view of their nursing care, they didn't have to have it lined up with the needs. It was just, if you made the bed, that was one thing you did.
Sure.
If you adjusted the blinds, if you talked to them about their grandkids, all of those things. Well, the students loved taking credit for everything they did. So these comfort care plans were quite easy for them to do. And then signs that their interventions worked.
Oh, okay.
That was the last column. How do you know their comfort was increased? Or signs that it didn't work. This particular one I would rethink or I'd modify. So they analyzed their own nursing care every day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I used it, but I was the only faculty member who applied any theory at all to undergraduate education.
When you've presented at conferences or whatever, have faculty members talked about integrating that into their...
Mostly I am invited to talk to nurses.
Oh, okay.
Not faculty.
Okay. So at hospitals and other
Hospitals
agencies?
and agencies, yes. Healthcare systems. I talked to a lot of administrators because I added a concept to the theory that was called institutional integrity.
Okay.
Because I wanted the administrators of those systems, those hospital systems, to value the time that nurses can take with their families and patients to increase their comfort. And because nurses would always say, but I don't have time to do all that. My argument to them was, well, it really is efficient once you get used to it.
Yeah.
And you start
it's
using
not,
it intuitively.
It's not something extra.
No.
People always think using theory is...
You do it right along with all your tasks. But for those who need some extra coaching or extra support, maybe a stressful surgery is coming up, and guided imagery would be appropriate. For the administration to value that and allow the nurses the time that it would take to do something extra special. And then patient satisfaction is a good indicator of institutional integrity, and they're all taking that data anyway. So you could correlate your intervention, the patient's increased comfort, and their increased patient satisfaction.
Yeah.
Well, patient satisfaction gets a lot of attention from administrators.
Oh, yeah. Press Ganey or one of those.
Right. They're collecting that data.
Yes. Well, I did a day a week at UT Medical Center, University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and the last couple of years I was at UT, and I looked at all that. We were actually implementing theory-based practice with modeling and role modeling, Helen Erickson's work, and the chief nurse had identified that, and I came on as like a consultant to help do that, and it was just fun. It was wonderful. I loved it, and but we saw less turnover of nurses, higher satisfaction, Press Ganey improved. I mean, it was just a number of
the nurse retention thing is another really important indicator of institutional integrity.
That's right. That's right. Now, when you do that and you meet with an administrator, do you find them receptive or?
Oh yeah. Oh, they're the ones that have given the okay to have me there in the first place.
Okay.
And oftentimes it was connected with their wanting to get an award, like magnet status or the gold award from JACO. So their boss usually said, we need to get an award to, make the new U.S. News and World Report best hospital list. And magnet is one of those criteria. It's a huge undertaking, but it's been thought that having a theoretical underpinning makes it easier because everybody gets on the same page.
Well, that's right. The language is the same, and if people could see that, it really improves the communication.
Right. And the administrators like the fact that we are looking at the whole institution, too, not just patient care. And not just nurse comfort. But we're looking at how it benefits the whole institution. So adding that concept was really helpful to get the administrator's attention. Okay.
Well, that's interesting. There's actually a series that Fitney has, and I used to use it when I taught. I didn't have anything to do with the development of it, but particularly the Roy video, and it's called Excellence in Action. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it's a video of the use of Roy's work in a hospital in New York, and literally the physicians talk about the use of Roy's framework. The hospital administrator, who is a physician, he talks about it on this video. And I always liked for the students to see that everybody buying in really was a major step forward for the whole hospital and for their records and all.
And, one system that I consulted with actually involved the engineers, the housekeepers, dietitians, pharmacy, and I had a separate modified presentation for each of those disciplines, and then we all came together and shared the language and the goals and different strategies that we might implement in the name of comfort, enhancing the comfort of the experience.
Well, I really understand that, because when I was at UT Medical Center, what happened was the social workers and the nutrition people and different ones started contacting me and said, can we do it too?
Right.
And I said, absolutely, they do. So I was bringing different ones on. I never did get the physicians to buy in, but the rest of the people really, and the person that collected and dealt with Press Ganey and did all that work, I can't remember her title, but it was fascinating. She was so pleased that I was interested in that data, because she, a lot of times nobody was paying a lot of attention to that data. So anyway, but those are great experiences where you feel like you're having an impact on the whole system. And the patients benefit, but the everybody really benefits.
Well, morale is increased.
Yes, it is. That's
substantially.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. That's what contributes to the decrease in turnover of nurses. when the
Right.
morale's better.
Well, this is the kind of nursing that they want to do.
Yes.
And they feel that they don't have time, so they get burned out because they're only doing technical stuff, and it's almost robotic, and they don't have that interpersonal connection anymore that enhances their life.
Yeah,
and their
that's the
career.
joy. I always
Yes,
think that's the joy of nursing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you're decline, if your boss doesn't let you do that, I tell nurses to go find another job. Go find a place where they do value this kind of nursing care, the art of nursing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people can bring about change in their agency, and sometimes they can't.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And sometimes it's just an uphill
Rather
battle.
than change disciplines, you know, and decide to go into business. I want to retain the nurses.
I know.
After they've gone
agree.
through all that
I
schooling.
Agree. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, now, if you're at a conference and you run into someone and they say, now, I know you developed comfort, but just tell me the short answer for what that's about.
Okay.
How do you answer that?
Well, comfort theory is about increasing the positive feelings and sensations of patients and families when they are in a stressful healthcare situation. And it is about measuring the outcome. It's outcome oriented for the patient and family. And it is about intervening to increase the comfort of that patient-family dyad with your interventions, your therapeutic use of self, your attention to all of their needs, not just one or two.
So it lets the nurse have intentionality about even like you say, adjusting the curtain or the blind, or
you're actually intending to do much more, but it's in a subtle way. You're finding out about the patient with every interaction and asking them how they're doing.
Yeah.
And hospitals have put the comfort scale, like rate your comfort from 0 to 10, with 10 being the highest possible right now.
Okay.
They've put that right against the pain scale, which is negative. The comfort scale is positive, but even the children do not get confused with that.
Oh, okay.
The nurses were concerned that that's kind of opposite paradigms and won't it be confusing, but it turns out it's not.
Oh, okay.
So what's interesting when you do that is that you find out that even though the patient might have considerable pain, it was expected, it signifies that they're getting better, and they know their outcome is going to be good, so they're able to live with it. And their total comfort is actually quite high, even though their pain level might be a 7. So it's interesting. It shows how different the two concepts really are.
Yeah.
And pain is very particularistic,
Yeah.
and narrow. Comfort includes the relief of pain, but it's not the only thing.
Yes. Well, I just appreciate so much your agreeing to do this interview, and this has just been a delight.
It certainly has been a privilege for me, Martha. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad we got to do this,
Yes.
and the readers and listeners and viewers from all over the world will get to hear about this and hear it in your own words.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that will help them look at comfort and think about it maybe in a different way.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much.